Japan and whaling have a very long history and a very controversial present. Japanese whalers operate today in defiance of international law and in the face of wide condemnation. They do have a justification for their whaling, but it's shaky, it's based on a legal technicality, and it explains a lot about why the rest of the world is so angry at Japan. But let's start at the beginning. Whaling in some form has been a part of Japanese culture for thousands of years. Modern whaling began there around 1900 when a Japanese researcher named Juro Oka traveled to Europe to learn the tricks of the Western whaling trade. Oka brought that knowledge back to Japan, declaring in 1910, "I am firmly convinced that we shall become one of the greatest whaling nations in the world." And he was right. In the 1900s, Japan revolutionized its whaling, soon competing with the likes of Norway, the UK, and Germany. Business was good for everyone. In 1938, whalers around the world took home more than 45,000 whales from the Antarctic alone. Not surprisingly, overfishing also became a problem. So in the 1930s, Western powers like the US and UK began to regulate whaling. Japan largely ignored those efforts. Then World War II hit, Japan was humbled, and in 1951 it joined the new International Whaling Commission, a group of nations seeking once and for all to regulate whaling. Since the 1950s, a lot has happened in the whaling industry, but here's the gist. Notably, global support for commercial whaling has completely evaporated. In 1986, the International Whaling Commission put an indefinite moratorium on all whaling. Japan fought many of the new regulations, and according to the Sunday Times, even bribed other countries to vote with them on whaling issues. But in spite of all that, the international pressure worked. Commercial whaling is basically a thing of the past. Except for that one technicality. There's a small piece of international law that says, in essence, governments can allow whaling for scientific purposes. And Japan has used that law to justify nearly all their whaling since the 1980s. They argue that only lethal research can teach us certain things about whales. A lot of people disagree with this. But a quick gut check here. Most of what Japan scientifically hunts are minke whales. Minke whales are not endangered. Other countries like Norway and Iceland hunt them. Norway, in fact, never bothered with that research loophole at all. They just officially objected to the moratorium, and they've been happily hunting them ever since. And Japan just doesn't hunt that many whales. In recent years, the number is usually well under 1,000 per year. So truthfully, the issue here is not mass whale slaughter. It's more that Japan just doesn't seem honest about its intentions. Officials claim that science is the reason for the hunts, but in 2012, one Japanese official went on the record to say that the minke whale was hunted because it is said to have a very good flavor and aroma when eaten as sashimi and the like. In other words, scientifically, they're delicious. This all came to a head last year when the International Court of Justice basically called shenanigans on the whole operation. They argued that Japan's whaling could not reasonably be considered scientific, and they ordered Japan to cease its operations. Japan ignored that ruling, and this year plans to kill 333 minke whales, again, for science, which again has upset the rest of the world, and that is not likely to change. Just this month, the US and other nations penned a joint statement criticizing Japan. They wrote, "The science is clear. All information necessary for management and conservation of whales can be obtained through non-lethal methods." In other words, scientific whaling is a contradiction in terms. We just talked a lot about commercial whaling, and that at least countries are admitting to. But there's also a huge global market in illegal wildlife products. And we've got a story about that too. Check it out. The story of the illegal wildlife trade. That term covers a lot. Logging of exotic woods, endangered animals sold as pets, and all sorts of wildlife harvested for traditional medicines and foods, like caviar. And as always, please don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.